So when I showed up for my first day on the job at the office of Iowa Governor Robert Ray in September 1978, I was fulfilling that statement he had made to me a couple of years earlier about, we sure could use a guy like you here in Iowa, when I represented the White House at a refugee celebration. So finally I was eligible for the program. I signed up. Here I am. I walk in and I can't wait to work for this man who I considered a significant humanitarian. And so I'm coming to join his staff. I'm not replacing anybody. And I don't know how much they had thought about me, if any. But when I came, I said, well, I was shown down to where my office would be, and I had this small office down a back corridor in a room with no windows. It's got a desk, a telephone, a chair, a couple of fluorescent lights overhead, and it's away from all of the other traffic of people coming and going in the governor's office. It's away from where he sits. And I don't really have any assignment. No one said, well, you'll be covering this part of state government or that part of state government. And as the chief of staff left me there and walked out the door and kind of pulled the door shut, so I'll leave you alone to get oriented, I'm sitting there saying, wow, what have I done? What am I in the middle of? What was I thinking when I came here to do this? Have I made a wrong turn in my career? Should I have stayed in Washington? Coming out of Holbrook's office, I'd have gone on to some other high-profile opportunity in the State Department. And I had thought I made the wrong turn and I'm on the wrong road. And it was pretty lonely sitting there and kept waiting. Somebody will come and talk to me, but they didn't. And when I went home, I was saying, well, wonder if too late to turn around and leave. But of course I didn't. And as I came back and there'd be staff meetings and I'd sit in the staff meetings and listening to the issues going on. And the other thing, of course, that I came to focus on was that the governor was up for re-election. And I had thought, oh, he's so popular, his re-election, he'll be a shoo-in. But that wasn't the case at all. He was in a tight race against a very attractive state senator named Jerry Fitzgerald. And while Governor Ray was ahead in the polls, or that it was not a foregone conclusion. So I said, whoa, what if he loses? The new governor's not going to have anything to do with me. I'll have to pick up and leave. Then part of the election campaign was that the Democratic-controlled legislature was doing an investigation of the officer who was leading the Iowa National Guard, a general named Junior Burkhead. And Burkhead was being accused of the high crime of having had his secretary, his office assistant, type his term paper for a course he was taking for after school for a master's program, and that she was doing it on government time, and therefore that was illegal. And I thought, I just came from Washington, where we had Watergate, where the president was forced from office, where the controversy around the Vietnam War and war crimes, and I said, this is what passes for a scandal in Iowa, is whether somebody typed your term paper. They ought to be congratulating him for wanting to better himself But no, boy, everybody were, adhere to the rule of law. So they said, well, why don't you, Ken, go up and sit in the legislative hearings and just kind of watch and see what's happening. They didn't seem to really have a good handle on it. So I go up, I sit in the hearing. I, of course, have been around the military a great deal in Vietnam, and I'm there listening to what's going on, and it becomes quite apparent to me that, number one, how seriously it's being taken, and second, what a big issue it's becoming for the press, who are there in large numbers covering it, and that this issue has the potential for jumping out and becoming a central part of the election campaign. So I'm not there to do politics. I'm a civil servant paid by the federal government, but I can certainly listen and take notes appropriately because it's about an agency of the state government. So I go back down that night after being there for 2 or 3 hours. I give a briefing to the Chief of Staff, Wythe Willie, and he becomes ashen-faced at what I describe. And it's clear that whoever on the staff had been following this were sort of dismissing it as nothing to worry about, we don't need to be concerned. And I give him this completely different briefing, how the press are interested, how it's becoming a serious issue, how Junior Burkhead's being brought in to testify about this, how his secretary, his assistant's being brought in. And the Chief of Staff is so taken aback. He takes me in, he says, the governor's got to hear this right away. Takes me into the governor's office. And now here I am, the new guy in town, giving him the detailed briefings that no one else has about what's going on that can impact his reelection and his campaign. But it's all about what are the issues being mentioned in the legislature, what's happening. I've got all the details. I give him a report just like I would have done in Washington on this. And so I would become then the go-to person. Go back up every day. I'm up in the hearings. They didn't happen every day, but every time there was a hearing, I'd be up there. I'd be watching. I'd be coming back to report and telling the governor about how this was coming to a head and the detailed questions as how Burkhead was now being, this was closing in on him. And it would lead to even more significant developments in the weeks ahead.